Hello students, welcome to this new session on ICWA final paper 20A, which is about strategic performance management and business valuations, Spm&Bv. So this is CACS Pushkaraj Vishnu Doshi, and we are together for the entire sessions of this subject, and I have been taking you through each and every chapter of the study material that has been provided by the Institute of Cost and Works Accountants of India, and in a way I am following the study material only. Each chapter theory which is there, I have tried to concise it and crisply from examination perspective, I have tried to summarize it and present it in the session by way of a PPT while taking the session. So in this session again we are covering the module 7, which is business valuation methods and approaches, and in that, which is comprising of 10% of weightage, the overall scheme of things. In that we are seeing, we have the third chapter now, which is about from the study material perspective, it's 7.3, which is about book value multiples. And what is book value multiples, we will see now the whole concept. So book value multiples, typically there are various approaches. One is the asset based approach, also known as asset accumulation method, net asset value method, adjusted book value method, and asset build up method. So these are the four alternate names which are there for asset based approach, and the purpose of this approach is to determine a company's equity value by evaluating the realistic fair market value of its assets minus liabilities. So whatever company's equity value is determined by evaluating the assets, that is it, which are comprising in the company financial statements. So the realistic, that is the fair market value, is determined for each of its assets, out of which the liabilities are reduced, and that typically gives you the asset value or asset accumulation method or net asset value method, adjusted book value method, or asset build up method. So key concept over here is book values from the balance sheet are unreliable typically, because these are predominantly historical costs and may not be the realistic indication of the value of that particular asset. So therefore book values from the balance sheet are unreliable due to accounting depreciation and historical cost, obviously, and therefore adjustments are made in the ordinary course of business to reflect fair market value or present value of future earnings from same assets. So this is the key concept of asset based approach. In this asset based approach, which is the book value multiple, there are two main methods. One is the liquidation value, and second is the, just a second, I am so one is the liquidation method and second is the replacement cost method. Yeah, sorry. So the two main methods are liquidation value. So for example, estimated selling price of assets. So if at all assuming that the business is going for liquidation because of maybe the members have asked for voluntary winding up, or creditors have asked for a voluntary winding up, or the bankruptcy has been declared and under the court's order the liquidation has been ordered by the tribunal. Any situation, liquidation value, which is typically the estimated selling price of the assets if the business is shut down either voluntarily or mandatorily by the NCLT order. So that's one liquidation value. Second is the replacement cost. So replacement cost method is typically the cost to rebuild or replace all assets at current market prices. So that is called as replacement cost, or cost to rebuild or replace all assets at the current market prices. So at the same time, under replacement cost method, maybe depreciated replacement cost can be used whenever appropriate. However, there are certain limitations for this asset-based approach, and hence it is not suitable when valuing going concerns due to limited data on intangible assets. Difficulty valuing special use tangible assets. And thirdly, the third limitation is typically more accessible firm level than asset level comparable data. So asset wise comparable data is very limitedly available, and more firm level comparables are available. That's why these are the limitations for asset based approach. Again, in the asset based approach, the yields lower values because it ignores intangible value and earnings potential, focusing only on physical assets that are present and their worth of it. However, having said so, the asset-based approach is best suited for companies with low profitability and poor growth prospects. And poor growth prospects. Secondly, it is best suited for banks or financial firms where asset liability market values are known. Thirdly, it is best suited for natural resource companies, example where assets are tied to market price outputs, and small or early stage firms with few intangible assets. So for these four sets of companies, asset based approach is best suited. So in a way, this is what a short concept of book value multiple is, and precisely it's called as asset based approach. So with this, the chapter gets over, and of course, as a part of my taking the sessions, I am covering the short answers and long answer question and answers that are there at the end of the respective chapter also. So similarly, even though this chapter is a small chapter, there are short question and answers which are given at the end of the chapter, and I am walking you through the various concepts that have been discussed in those short answers and long answer question. So to begin with, the first short question and answer has discussed about the concept of definition and limitations of asset based approach. So definition wise, typically it calculates equity by subtracting the liabilities from the fair value of assets. So as simple as that, the formula is fair value of assets minus liabilities, which is equivalent to equity. That's how the equity is calculated. However, this asset based approach has a limitations wherein book values are not equal to fair market values, and asset depreciation distorts the true value. It is hard to value intangible and special use assets also, and usually gives the lowest valuation. So these are the limitations of it. Then in short question and answer, second, the concept of when asset based approach is used has been discussed. So this asset based approach method is, or book value multiple, is used when low profit firms with poor growth outlooks are there, banks and financial firms where transparent asset values are present, natural resource firm where asset prices are market linked, and in case of early stage or small firms with minimal intangible assets. In these four types of companies, the asset based approach is used. In short question answer 3, the concept of liquidation value versus replacement cost has been discussed. Now typically the liquidation value is the sale value of assets if the firm shuts down either voluntarily or mandatorily through NCLT order. So in that situation, what will be the sale value that those assets will fetch will be called as liquidation value. Second is the replacement cost. So replacement cost is the cost to replace all assets used for ongoing businesses, may consider depreciation also in such case. And in replacement cost, at times depreciated replacement cost is to be considered wherever appropriate. Fourth concept in the short question answer 4, the concept that was discussed or is discussed is the implications of undervalued assets. So implications of undervalued assets typically are that the investors and lenders may undervalue the firm, limits the fundraising capacity, and lastly it misleads the strategic decision making process also, especially for investments and dividends. So these are the implications of undervalued assets. So if at all a particular asset is undervalued, then the decisions of investment will go wrong, the dividends will be dividend decision making will go wrong. At the same time, because the assets are undervalued, there will be limitations on raising fund, so it limits the fundraising capacity. It's very difficult for the organization to go to the lenders and seek and borrowings, etc. And thirdly, the investors or lenders may undervalue the firm because the assets, underlying assets of that firm itself are undervalued. So these are the implications of undervalued assets. And therefore, the assets have to be valued at appropriate price. Then in short question answer number 5, the concept that has been discussed is about fair value per share. So this fair value per share is typically the formula is fair value per share is equal to net asset value, which is the fair value basis, which is derived on fair value basis divided by the number of shares. Long question and answer summary. So in long question and answer number 1, the concept that has been discussed is how to evaluate assets and liabilities. So typically the asset based approach. So the steps that are involved is list all the assets and liabilities, adjust assets to fair market value, which will be realistic sale value or earnings potential, and subtract therefrom the total liabilities to determine the equity value. So in short, listing of all assets and liabilities, obviously it will be evident from the balance sheet, the audited balance sheets itself, and in such taking those assets and liabilities list, the assets have to be valued at fair market value, being the realistic sale value or earnings potential, and from that fair market value of assets subtract the liabilities, the total liabilities, which will determine the equity value of that particular firm. In long question and answer number 2, the limitations and suitability of the asset based approach has been discussed. The limitations are that it doesn't reflect intangible value because it's about assets, the intangible value, intangible assets is not reflected in that, and at times it is very hard to price unique or non-liquid assets also. Suitability wise, this particular asset based approach is suitable when poorly performing, suitable for poorly performing firms, then for firms likely to be liquidated, because liquidation value will be then considered or can be a appropriate method for asset based approach. And third, where tangible assets are the core, like for example for banks and mining, which are capital intensive or asset intensive organizations. In such situation, the tangible assets are at the core, and therefore the asset based approach valuation is suitable for such kind of firms. In long question answers number 3, the impact of intangibles on valuation is discussed. The properly valued intangibles like patents, brand value can boost the net asset value, often undervalued or omitted, leading to undervaluation if not adjusted for fair value. So the limitations of intangibles, the impact of intangibles are that most of the time it is very difficult to value them, and at times it gets often undervalued or are omitted also, which leads to undervaluation if not adjusted to the fair value. So these are the impacts of intangibles on valuation. So with this, we in a way end the chapter or the session itself. I will recap the entire chapter. It's a very small chapter in the study material itself. To be precise, so I will walk you through this session and quickly summarize the entire session. So in this session we saw the book value multiple. Now this book value multiple is derived by following a asset based approach. Now with this asset based approach is also called known as asset accumulation method. Then we saw it's called as net asset value method, NAV method also, adjusted book value method also, or asset build up method. The purpose of this asset based approach is to determine a company's equity value by evaluating the realistic fair market value of its assets after reducing the liabilities. So that's what is equity value. The key concept in this asset based approach is the book values from the balance sheet are unreliable due to accounting depreciation and historical cost obviously, and adjustments are made to reflect fair market value or present value of future earnings from assets. So these are the key concepts in the asset based approach, which turns out to be the book value multiple. The two main methods are liquidation value, which is estimated selling price of assets if the business is shut down. So assuming that the business is being voluntarily shut down by the creditors or by the members, or through the court order, NCLT order, National Company Law Tribunal order. In such, because of the IBC code, etc., in such situation, because the business is going to get shut down, the estimated selling price of assets is calculated, and that will be the liquidation value. Second method in asset based approach is the replacement cost. So over here, cost to rebuild or replace all assets at current market price. So cost to rebuild or replace all assets at current market price, in a way, assuming that the existing assets are required to be rebuilt or replace, the existing assets have to be replaced, then what would be the cost that will be required to be incurred is the replacement cost. That will be considered as the book value multiple. At times in replacement cost, the firm may or the valuer may use depreciated replacement cost whenever appropriate. However, the asset based approach has limitations. So this asset based approach is not suitable when valuing going concerns due to limited data on intangible assets. Secondly, there is difficulty valuing special use tangible assets also, and more accessible firm level than asset level comparable data. In these three situations, or in these three cases, valuing going concerns for them it's not suitable. Continuing with the asset based approach, then we saw that the yields lower values because it ignores intangible value and earnings potential, focusing only on the physical asset worth. So whatever the physical assets are there, how much they will fetch, that will be the value, which in a way fails to or rather ignores the intangible value also of the firm. At the same time, the future earnings potential also are ignored. Therefore, the asset based approach is best suited for companies with low profitability and poor growth as prospects. Secondly, it is suited for banks or financial firms where assets and liabilities market values are known easily. Thirdly, natural resource companies where assets are tied to market priced outputs. And fourth type of firm which are small or early stage firms with few intangible assets. So these are the four firms or organizations where this asset based approach is best suited. So with this, the chapter ends over there at that concept, and then we saw the short answer summary wherein the definition and limitation of asset based approach were discussed. Definition wise, asset based approach calculates equity by subtracting liabilities from the fair value of assets. Limitations: book values are not equal to fair market values. At the same time, asset depreciation distorts true value. Hard to value intangible and special use assets usually gives the lowest valuation. When this asset based approach is to be used, typically to be used when for low profit firms with poor growth outlook, banks and financial firms transparent asset values, natural resource firm because asset prices are market linked, and early stage small firms with minimal intangible assets. For them, this asset based approach can be used. Then we saw the liquidation value and replacement cost. Liquidation value typically is the sale value of assets if the firm shuts down, and replacement cost is the cost to replace all assets used for ongoing businesses, and this replacement cost at times may also consider depreciation. The implications of undervalued assets, it was discussed in short question and answer 4. wherein investors, lenders may undervalue the firm. This will limit the fundraising capacity of the firm, and at times it misleads strategic decision-making process also in relation to investments and dividends. Fifth, short question answer discussed about fair value per share. Now this formula is fair value per share is equal to net asset value, which is fair value based, divided by the number of shares. Then we saw the long question and answer concepts that were discussed. First question and answer, long question and answer discussed how to evaluate assets and liabilities in asset based approach. So the process is to list all assets and liabilities, adjust the values, adjust assets to fair market value, that is the realistic sale value or earnings potential, and from there subtract the total liabilities to determine equity value. In long question and answer 2, the limitations and suitability were discussed. Limitations doesn't reflect intangible value, and asset based approach is hard to price unique or non-liquid assets. However, it is suitable for poorly performing firms where profitability is very low. It is also suitable for firms that are likely to be liquidated, because in a way the company is going to get shut down. So whatever the assets will face the value will be the liquidation value, and in that case the asset based approach, because it's all about going to shut down, everything will be sold off in a way. That's why this asset based approach is suitable when liquidation is going to be happening for the firms. And thirdly, where tangible assets are core, example for banks and mining in companies, assets are very much tangible and can be easily identifiable and can be valued. So for them asset based approach is suitable. Then in short question answer third, we saw impact of intangibles on valuation. Now this typically properly valued intangibles like patents, brand value can boost net asset value. So valuation of intangibles is very critical in asset based approach, and if properly valued then it can boost the net asset value. And however, if the intangibles are undervalued or omitted from valuation, then it may lead to undervaluation if not adjusted for fair value of these intangibles. So that's what the concepts which were discussed in the long answer. So with this we end the session. I have walked you through the entire chapter number 3, which is book value multiples, and in that we saw the various concepts. I have summarized it also. At the same time, I have walked you through the short question and answer concepts and long question and answer concepts that have been discussed. So with this we end the session, because I have been restricting myself for each chapter one session, so that there is no confusion and easy to follow for examination perspective. So with this we will stop for this session. In a way, out of the 7 module, 3rd chapter is completed. There is 4th chapter which is about revenue and sector specific multiples, which I will be covering the next session. So see you in the next session. Till then, signing off here, CACS Pushkaraj Vishnu Joshi. Bye bye. Thank you.